NFT and Metapreneurs. I'm not sure if that's our new word that we coined here or if that's being used in the industry, but I love it. It's a great word. And so we're going to talk about NFTs and the big brands that are starting to use NFTs, as well as some of the smaller artists, and how that affects us all, how it affects the artists, how it affects the creators, and how it affects the big brands and the customers. So with that, I'd like to start by having everybody introduce themselves briefly. Anybody can go first, whoever has their microphone. Who would like to start from the panelists?
I can start. So my name is Casey Craig. I am Global Head of Communications at CoinDesk. If you're not familiar with CoinDesk, we're one of the more prominent media companies that cover everything from crypto to blockchain, Web3, metaverse, NFTs. We also host Consensus, which is one of the largest crypto conferences in the world. And then we also bought TradeBlock recently. So CoinDesk Indices is one of the most widely sourced pricing trackers for various cryptocurrencies.
Great. I think everybody knows who CoinDesk is.
Okay, good.
So anyway, but thank you, Casey. It's a delight to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Who else would like to introduce themselves? Well, everyone has to, so might as well get it over
I'll go
with.
next.
Okay.
All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. All right. My name is John, and I'm actually the marketing lead for Shiba Inu, the crypto SHIB, yeah, and also the NFT collector as well.
Great. So excited to have you, John. I have never met anyone from the Shiba Inu project, and I'm thrilled to be in contact with you.
Thank you for having me here.
Who else shall we have Dr. Gunther?
Hi, yeah, very happy to do. So my name is Gunther Lopatz. I'm a partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers in Zurich, and I'm leading PwC Legal for Switzerland, and I'm also on the global board. And we've had some exciting, I would say, 8 years in the crypto sphere, advising many of the Swiss players. And in the past, I would say 2 years, it expanded also into NFTs, obviously, which is an amazing area. And on the private side, I'm one of the co-founders of Excelixis Capital, which is an investment firm which is backing, on the one hand, circularity, which is very important for us, but on the other hand, blockchain projects in the widest sense, including NFTs. And I like him quite a bit myself, and very recently bought some NFTs of Andy Warhol, but that's maybe something for later discussions.
Wow,
yes,
so exciting.
Very exciting. I had the privilege to work with Gunther several years ago, setting up something in Switzerland, a foundation in Switzerland. So thrilled to have you on the stage. Shall we also have Fotini? Do we have Fotini?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Fotini Valenti. Thank you for inviting me. Excited to be part of this panel. So I am an AHRC Leadership Fellow at the University College London. And I'm also the founder of a spin-out of UCL, Museum Collectibles, where we consult museums on NFTs, understanding and leveraging NFTs and the risks and the opportunities that come with that. I've been doing research on this field, monetization of museum images, since 2017. So NFTs really, brought a shift in my field, and now I'm also, commercializing that research. So yeah, quite exciting.
Can't wait to hear your perspective. Thank you. How about Michelle?
Hi, thanks so much for having me, and excited to meet all of you folks. My seatmate keeps leaving me. So I'm Michelle, and I'm an NFT strategist for creators across the board, anyone who needs end-to-end solutions, entering from any industry, healthcare, design, high-end retail. We work with trying to collaborate and making sure that they understand what the opportunities are in Web3 and create products such that we don't have middlemen continue to be the salesmen for creator economies, but rather allow for creators to end-to-end join the Web3 ecosystem. And my background primarily is in artificial intelligence. I used to work at Google and Verily as a product manager, but the crypto space was so fast and exciting that I ended up working with a museum to throw a conference gallery and an auction for NFTs, and it was so effective in fundraising for conservation that I've decided to work full time in helping creators in this space.
Amazing.
So
You'll have some. We'll definitely be exploring your perspective as we talk about these topics, because you may have a slightly bias, a different bias. So I would like to thank you so much, everybody, for introducing yourselves. We have a very big variety here, and I really want to get into the meat of some of these very sticky questions. So I'm going to plunge right in. I will introduce myself. I'm the CEO of Fluidify. So I'm really in the DeFi space. I'm kind of a dabbler in the NFT space, but have worked in it. But really my passion is DeFi and democratization of finance around the world. So I'm coming from that perspective. But I'm watching the NFT space, and what I see is that there's a lot of hype about the metaverse. There's a lot of hype about NFTs, and there's some concerns about, is this going to be another big brand play? Is it going to be a creator play? So let's start with just a basic question about the metaverse. Who actually spends time in the metaverse? Who is really in the metaverse now and experiencing it? And are there groups that are excluded from it? Anyone can start.
I'm happy to start, actually. So one thing that I've noticed is that are we able to ask the audience questions and they're able to raise their hand virtually?
They can click on an emoji, so they can put a thumbs up and a thumbs down. So if you want a yes or no question, you could do that.
I'd love to ask the audience, if you give a thumbs up if you guys have been in the metaverse, experienced it in any way.
I see a few thumbs up, a few thumbs down.
Yeah. So that's so interesting. So I love asking people that, because that's kind of the biggest perception right now with the metaverse is and I love this question, like, who is actually using it? And what groups are excluded? I think we're seeing so much hype about the metaverse, and it's amazing. It's going to be this amazing platform, and there's so much possibility, potential, and opportunity. However, I think it's really difficult to access. Like, if you think about the technology that's needed for people to access the metaverse, and I think one of the biggest hypes about the metaverse, it's so accessible, but it's really not. If you think about the tools for the metaverse, like an Oculus, I think right now the retail price is around $3,000. That is not something that the mass majority of people can afford, nor do they have like the access to, even purchase an Oculus or something like that. So I think a lot of people that are excluded from this reality are people that lack the technological infrastructure to even access the metaverse. I think it's people that also just can't afford the tools that you need to get in the metaverse. And also it's a massive learning curve for anyone that is in a demographic where they're a little technologically behind and they don't have that much experience in these, immersive platforms. I think they're going to be excluded as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Does anyone disagree with that from the panelists? Does anybody have a different perspective on that?
I can hop in on that, that's such a fascinating viewpoint, Casey. I think I realize I've been defining metaverse in a different way, and I'm curious to hear your definition, but I'm surprised not everyone in this room raised their hand, given that we are in a metaverse. In my definition, metaverse is any human interaction that's not taking place in the physical universe, and so everyone by virtue of speaking here in this room has interacted with the metaverse, and every touch point you have in sending iMessages or using social media is not as immersive as the world that Casey is describing, but at least for me is what the metaverse includes. And totally agree, there's so many issues with accessibility in terms of affordability of the technology and access of connectivity, but even beyond that, the user experience is in my mind the most exclusive part, where, like Casey was saying, using an Oculus is required to enter certain metaverses. You'll notice I keep on accidentally jumping by the pool because I get confused about how to interact in the digital world. I think I love this app, and it allows for small conversations and group conversations, but it demonstrates that there's so much room for growth in the different types of metaverses to make them accessible for people like me who get confused by buttons.
Mm-hmm. So you would say that we're in the metaverse right now, Michelle?
I think so. I haven't met any of them. If I were to tell my parents I was speaking to a bunch of people online about crypto, it definitely sounds like the metaverse.
Yeah. Casey, what do you think is the metaverse?
That's such an that's such an interesting question too, because how do we define the metaverse? Is it AR, VR? Is it a mix of both? Is it, Michelle, as you just said, it's just kind of, we are virtually in this, we're virtually in this app and like at certain levels of social media. I honestly do think the metaverse in Web3 is defined as something that is completely immersive. Like it's beyond virtual reality, it's beyond augmented reality, and it's kind of like, that movie Ready Player One, not just referencing a movie, but I think it is supposed to be an all-encompassing experience and you are fully in it. So that's kind of what I think is the definition of metaverse. But I do think it has a lot of different connotations.
Yeah. Just to say, I mean, if I may, is that right?
Of course.
I'm not sure. Shall we raise our hands or
No, just start talking. You're fine.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm coming from a technical background, so I studied computer science, and in my master's, I can specialize in augmented reality for museums. My field of interest. But anyway, I was quite early on in the AR, and I still in a field I kind of understand quite deeply. I didn't find it as exciting to follow up, but I did do quite a lot in my master's. And I don't think AR is in any way or form synonym to the metaverse. I think what we before the Facebook, before Mark's statements and his creepy video, I think metaverse, cinema of the metaverse was obviously Decentraland, the crypto voxels, were immersive sort of worlds that are that are fully decentralized, where NFTs are the default for every asset that is being kind of traded in there, and so this it's a technology that has come out of Web3. I don't think we had that before. I don't think AR now somehow we kind of feel that anything that's what kind of Mark brought into the conversation, and any sort of mixed reality is we're kind of like in the metaverse, in any kind of sort of mixed reality. I kind of disagree, and for me, I think they will converge eventually. But I think right now, still, I mean, I was watching a video the other day, and there was a person commentating on Mark's announcement, and he had like Mark's announcement playing, and then he kind of paused it, and Mark was like, "Metaverse doesn't yet exist," and the person went, "Oh no, Mark, sorry, it does exist. It's called Decentraland. It's actually better from what you're describing. It's open source. It's this." Centralized, so I kind of still have in my head, like, as a synonym of the crypto world, like the decentralized DLTs, decentralized ledger technologies, and as a synonym of platforms such as Decentraland and crypto voxels and the what was the other one?
Sandbox.
Yeah, Sandbox. Yeah. Thanks.
Well, I agree with what you've been saying, and I think first of all, the metaverse is such it's only starting now. I think we're seeing great first ventures, but it's a bit like in the 90s in the internet, when the end of the 90s we thought that's it, but it was only really starting. There was no Facebook, there was no Google, and so forth. So it's, the same is kind of happening right now when you stumble into that and when you try to find your way around it. So I probably have heard that PwC has bought land for an office, or it was our colleagues from Hong Kong, I believe, and we're from Switzerland trying to join them there. But it's very clearly based on that very understanding that, okay, we want to be there, we want to show people that we're interested, we want to show a bit what we can do and so forth. But ultimately, we are just keeping our fingers in all of those metaverses that are starting now. And it's going to be an amazing time. And especially when you talk to the very young people right now, like my son, he's 12, right? And he's really just getting into that, and it's just an amazing space.
But you know what what PwC did by buying land in the metaverse was you made it all right for all of the rest of us who are running companies to buy a virtual office, because now suddenly it's, PwC did it. We want to be real big company too. So sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, it's so true. I was gonna say the same thing, is that PwC really opened the door. I mean, JP Morgan opened an office in a bank, actually. It's really more of a lounge, but they opened something in the metaverse yesterday. But one thing too that's undeniable, whether people can define it or not, whether they've experienced it or not, whether people even know what it is, it's undeniable the market value of the metaverse. Like, it is, every corporation wants to be involved, because if they miss this opportunity, it's like missing the beginning of the internet. So I do think that there's a
totally
big
agree with
that.
that.
Yeah, it's going to be what, like they said it's going to be over a $1 trillion industry in the next like 10 years. They think it's going to be like, you know, if you miss it, I mean, and that's kind of why people are joking with Facebook. And it's interesting that after Facebook announced Meta, it was like an awful rebranding. I think they just missed their shares in the last quarter. But even though they're kind of like, it's funny that happened to them, like it kind of worked. It kind of created this ripple effect where all these other big corporations are entering the metaverse. It's a little bit more subtle. They're not rebranding to Meta, but it's definitely a big wave.
Yeah.
John, what do you think?
If to me, okay, for metaverse is actually a place where, to me, my understanding is that metaverse is a place where we can be ourselves, you know, like what you say, Decentraland and Sandbox, all right? These two places, we can actually like just have like an avatar, a VX, for example. Then we can have like them running around like us. All right. Another place is like what PwC did is like they bought a land. All right. So this thing is going to be a very big thing. Like they say, like what they say just now is like 10 years time, it's going to be a 1 trillion market. I don't think it'll be a 10 years time. I think it'll be less than that, because that's what I did yesterday. I went to Sandbox. I tried to look for a land, and it's totally sold out. And I see big names came in, such as like Gucci just came in.
It needs to feel mainstream. It needs to feel widely adopted enough that you know you can resell a digital version or an NFT that's certified for your physical piece, but it's just verified on the blockchain instead. And so, in my opinion, it's extremely important for these larger brands to set the precedent, to show the examples of how you can do it, since ultimately the value of an NFT comes from communal respect for that NFT. And so it's important for that branding awareness, but there needs to be a careful balance where it's that brand awareness is shared with other creators, that those are not the only NFTs that people purchase. So as an NFT buyer myself, I am really careful to diversify, where I know that the brand value NFTs will increase in value with more security and there's greater volatility with newfound artists, but I still diversify across my portfolio because it's really important to make sure that we ensure the trends go across all of the creators, not just to the people setting the original benchmarks of how to create.
Well, that's very responsible of you and conscientious, but do you think that do you think that other people are going to be as conscientious as Michelle in buying their NFTs, or do you think big brands are going to take an unfair slice of this? What are the dangers?
I definitely think big brands are going to take a slice of it. I mean, if you already think of like, this is how I see big brands are entering it. They don't want to miss the opportunity. And I think what's going to happen is that any of these like smaller guys, whether they're creators or just smaller companies entering the metaverse, the thing is with these bigger corporations, they're so encumbered by like, they have issues with talent retention. People don't want to work at these big corporations anymore. They have issues with being innovative just because they aren't hiring the top most innovative talent, among a lot of other reasons too. And so I kind of see these bigger brands are just basically like Pac-Man. They're going to eat these smaller companies if they can. They're going to acquire them. I mean, not even just bigger ones acquiring the smaller ones, but we just saw like the M&A deal with Microsoft and Activision. You know, it kind of reminds me of the beginning of social media too, when Facebook bought Instagram because they just didn't want to compete. So I do think, I mean, I'm always rooting for the underdog, and I do kind of always like to see the smaller companies come out on top, but they will be competing with these corporations. And kind of how we were talking about before, the inaccessibility. One of the biggest problems with the metaverse right now is that people are having a hard time building like the technology infrastructure, not even just consumers being able to access it, but these bigger companies are just not able to build the hardware fast enough, the software fast enough. But if there's smaller companies that can do that, and they might be watching some other, I mean, it's funny to watch like Meta fail because other corporations are taking notes, they're succeeding off that failure in some ways. And it would be great to see some of these smaller brands like really figure out that secret formula on how to kind of overcome a lot of the challenges that the metaverse has right now. I think that they would succeed, or they're going to be bought. And either way, that's good for the founders in some way, but it's going to be an interesting dynamic.
I'm going to use your tools, Casey. Let's just ask the audience quickly, how many people in the audience have an NFT in their portfolio? Just click the thumbs up if you have one.
May I add a comment to this acquisition Pac-Man metaphor, which I really like? Yeah. So to be honest, you know, when I started exploring crypto by coincidence a few months before NFTs, and at that point I had become really sad on how technology had come to be, because I grew up with the internet. You know, I had no cell phone when I was like 10. I had a very basic phone when I was like 15, and then I had dial-up until I was like 20, and only mobile phone when I was like 24. So, and then I had realized that after the pandemic, all of our lives was going through 4 companies. And I was finding that very, very, very miserable and very sad, and pretty much the opposite of the optimism, the optimism, the utopia that we were, you know, a lot of like very intellectual, smart people working on on amazing ideas, you know, do no evil and things like that. And then when I kind of discovered, and I was just, because as I mentioned, I did have a technical background, and I kind of started looking into the blockchain technology and how it all works, you know, it kind of gave us a hope. Yes, there is a lot of venture capital in this space, but Ethereum cannot be acquired, and it doesn't need to be acquired. It trades billions every day. And then, you know, you have other blockchains, and their coins go, you know, they have all quite spectacular valuations. So that big fish eats small doesn't necessarily need to happen here. Yes, we do see a lot of VC funding. Yes, there's going to be big institutions playing their part. But this acquisition game, where it will all lead, like, as to pretty much all other industries, where everything goes through three companies, you know, from finance to aviation to like everything. So at least with the blockchain technology, we see hope that, you know, me, that I'm invested in so-and-so project, I can invest my money in it. I do not necessarily need to raise private capital, and that can make me quite, you know, you don't need to rely on external funding, and you don't need to make those hard decisions like, should I sell to Facebook, should I not sell to Facebook, you know, if your project goes somewhere.
Well, just the results of my little poll, I saw about half the audience actually owns an NFT, which is amazing. Like, that's a huge number. I would not have expected seeing that a little while ago. So to your point, Fotini, I think you're right. This is becoming a more distributed space. There's more people participating, and the more people that participate, just like Ethereum, it's very distributed. It can't be acquired. It can't be consolidated into one centralized power entity. At the same time, these brands, we're hearing from these, you know, from everybody, that these brands are helping with adoption. Gunter, do you have an opinion on some of the comments that have been made up till now about big brands versus small creators?
Well, obviously, it's quite interesting because PwC is a big brand in that sense. But when you think about the participation, which we have discussed, this is actually mostly done by the young people, by the youngest people in our firm, right? So despite our, whatever, 250,000 people working for it, this was a group of 5-6 people who started it. So even within the big companies, I think it needs the little ones, and they're decentralized, right? Yes, it was done out of Hong Kong, I believe, but they are collaborating now with Switzerland and Germany and the US and so forth. So it's under the umbrella of that. It's more smaller entities. But with all of that, you know, I personally think, and I probably shouldn't be saying that working for PwC and all, but I believe that the time of those big companies is gone. Right, decentralization is really moving forward, and I think it's a good idea because centralization is core of the part of the core problems of this world. So I think that the decentralization ultimately gives us the power to really spend 80-90% of our working time on something we're really passionate about, rather than spend 80% working on something we're not interested in. So down the road, I think metaverse, NFTs, whatever you want to call it, it's just leading the way.
Oh, I think we lost your microphone. You may have gone on. You may have gone on mute.
On a call,
Sorry, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Yes. Did you want to finish your thoughts?
No, it's good. I finished it anyway.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, very interesting. John, did you have a comment on it?
Yeah. All right. Like you mentioned, big brands get involved. Is it the end for the small guys? I don't think so. To me, it's an opposite way, because I think that if to say the big brands comes into the metaverse, it's actually like a push factor for the young ones to come in as well. Yeah, for example, like we see, firstly, we have had Adidas came into the metaverse in the month of December. And then suddenly we see Artifacts they got bought by Nike as well. Yeah, so I think all of this small guys won't just that will be the end for them. It's actually like a push factor for them to be unique. Because to me, the metaverse is very empty, a very big white space that a lot of creativity will come in. So what I see the way is all these big guys, when they come into the metaverse, they're gonna do like something very generic. But the new guys comes in, they're gonna be very different. So who would expect, for example, like a Bored Ape Yacht Club will have like a membership, as it's not like just a profile picture, but it plays like a membership as well and brings you to a certain community. Yeah. So we can see it that way. Like we just see Super Plastic got collaborated with Gucci. Yeah, and that's like Gucci with Super Plastic. Yeah, but you can see other small brands like we see other small brands like for example like Shiboshis were coming up with P2E. Recently we have Cool Cats coming up with Cool Pets with P2E as well. So all these small little guys who were like unknown in the industry, like all these names are suddenly creating big names for themselves. So I see there's a very big place of growth for all these small brands to be a big brand. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, good point. There's opportunities for collaborations that can actually boost some of these smaller brands. Does anyone have any burning comments that they didn't get to say on that topic? All right.
I wanted to make one last point building on what you just said, John, of this just reminds us that it's really the responsibility of the buyers. Big brands can only take over if buyers only buy big brands. And so companies will do whatever they want, but it's really the responsibility of the NFT holders to continue to buy responsibly.
Thanks, Michelle. Yes. All right. Well, we hear about comparisons with reality, between the reality and the metaverse quite a lot. I'm wondering, what is possible in the metaverse and with NFTs that would not even be a concept in the real world? So we can't even imagine it happening in the real world, but now it's suddenly possible in the metaverse.
All right. To me, in the metaverse, I think the main one will be connectivity, because in the metaverse is actually, like I say, it's a very big space, and you can have everyone from around the world to be in a space and communicate, exchange ideas, and be friends. That's a very big thing that I never expected. Like for example, like in olden days, like MSN, Yahoo Messenger, we only had a one-to-one interaction. But for metaverse, we can have like maybe hundreds and thousands of interaction in one space, and regardless where you are, we can just talk and be connected in one space.
So you're saying like an informal rather than, I mean, we already have connection with Zoom, we have email, we have Slack, we have everything, but you're saying that it's a more of a coffee or water cooler type of conversation where you can just be there. Yeah.
Yes, correct. It's totally different thing. For example, like we see in Zoom, we can see face to face. But in the metaverse, it's totally different thing. We can be dancing, we can be jumping, we can express our emotions for doing these meetups. Like, it's a free place, it's a free will, free idea, free place. We can just do whatever we want and no one is judging us. And we can just have fun. Sometimes even I think big corporations are actually adapting that this idea where you can have meeting like in a metaverse, and also you can just like be fun, like casually, no need to be sitting down on the table in a chair, be so formal, You can just be casually having meetings, doing ideas and all. So that's very big thing.
That's like New York City in the virtual world. I mean, in New York City, you can do anything you want on the street. No one will care.
So true.
Yeah,
it's like massive spontaneous.
Exactly. Sing, whatever, dance.
I think, I mean, about the metaverse, is this I think is this convergence with gaming, I think this is what Mark was referring to. And I mean, as it is right now, it has disrupted quite a few different industries. So for example, I was talking with a friend, Web3 founder as well, in this, and I told him, you cannot imagine the hate NFTs have got from the museum sector is unparalleled. And then he told me, oh, no, you don't know about gaming. Yeah. There's a lot of hate. Yeah, and okay, I can understand, and there are some valid arguments. There are some things that we should be taking care of. But anyway, we should be seriously considering that are not being seriously considered. And then I did receive like the next day newsletter from Crypto.com talking about this fierce debate that is going on in the gaming industry. Why? Because if a gamer in World of Warcraft was spending his life like 10 years ago, at the end his avatar would cost £2,000. Today, if you invest in your like a gaming character, then these items belong to you. Your fancy RTPK sneakers that Nike acquired, the company that Nike acquired, they belong to you. Or a fancy weapon that you own belongs to you. So this is, for example, in gaming. In museums, the obvious upside doesn't need to be metaverse, but I mean talking about NFTs, is that essentially what was this big invention that NFTs implemented scarcity technically. All of a sudden, a digital asset could be worth millions. Digital assets had value before. In Second Life, a person would go to real jail for stealing a virtual sofa for $800. I don't know if you remember those headlines. But now, nothing of that scale, selling a museum image for $500,000. So all of a sudden, it rewarded the photographers, the creators of born digital content, and equally the museums who own very valuable digitized collections.
So this is a concept we've thought of in the real world, but I always thought it would be so cool in the metaverse to like reconstruct like moments in time, like a battle scene in World War II, like the parts of the Roman Empire, ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and going back. I don't know if anyone's ever read the book Time and Again by Jack Finney, but it's set in like the 1950s, and the government is basically tapping like citizens to travel back in time. But before they can travel back in time, they have to create these extremely immersive experiences. So they're reconstructing like towns from the 1840s in these warehouses. But I always thought that would be so cool. Like one thing people forget about the metaverse is the flexibility in time. Like we're always thinking about the future, these futuristic cities that we could build, future buildings that haven't been built yet. But I always thought it would be cool to reconstruct and actually travel back in time. And maybe we could solve a lot of mysteries that way. But I don't know. I always thought that to me was really, really interesting.
Well, that's why I think metaverse did not precede the AR and VR, because this is a very good idea. And museums have been, despite running on quite limited budgets usually most of the time, they have done such reconstructions, they have created such virtual tours. So it's going to be amazing to see this convergence of the content that has already been created. Because each museum has been trying to use the mixed reality, for their own mixed reality, the AR, the VR for their own, collections, things that you're describing. So I think when we start seeing this convergence of metaverse worlds with material that museums have already prepared for virtual environments, it's going to be quite exciting.
Yeah.
Or beyond that, right? I was just referring to pieces of Warhols I've been buying recently. And the interesting thing is you buy this little piece, or this photograph of the original painting, and then you can really put the real painting into your flat, right? So previously it was very, very difficult to acquire them because they're starting at whatever 150K, which is just a notch above what the usual person would be paying for something. But all of a sudden you get it, right? And it's kind of the same experience, and more people get to see it, you can take it out and so forth. Plus, obviously, you can create all of the new art as well. So not only going backwards in history, but also forwards and creating a new, which is, as you just said, it's totally new.
Yeah, and then with the art too, people forget that when these masterpieces, the reason that they're in museums, some of them actually can never be shown to public because they can disintegrate. I mean, they're some of them are ancient. So that's actually one of my favorite things about NFTs too, is the digital copy of some of these masterpieces, because you can't, if I have a Picasso or a Monet, I'm really probably not going to showcase it in my home. I wouldn't want anything to happen to it. It'd have to be in the right temperature, the right light. Michelle, you would know this too, because you've been with museums. But if I had a digital copy of it and I could project that, or I could just have that and look at it and it would be like the perfect replica. I mean, I was and like even, tying that NFT into the metaverse too, having that and being able to enjoy it without the physical copy wearing down, that's a great use case and utility for it.
I think that in general, what I'm hearing from this group, which is what I love about the metaverse, is physics doesn't apply anymore. Chemistry doesn't apply anymore. So you can time travel. I've been advising installation artists to, since you don't have physics, build things that you would never be able to build in the physical world, since you're not constrained by physics. And not only can you do that, you can also, as someone was alluding to, do things you probably wouldn't do in the real world. When my team and I were researching how the metaverse works, one of my teammates went and robbed a bank because he could in the digital world, and he can't in the physical world without.
Was it JP Morgan's bank?
I can follow up. It's probably all on the blockchain, but he used it to pay for some ice cream at a store. It was a little unclear, but I asked why. Why are you spending your time doing this? And he said, I can't anywhere else, and it's kind of fun. And it made me really understand that suddenly all of these constraints that we have in our physical world no longer exist. And not only is that the case, but NFTs give you a set of jerseys to identify other people who are interested in those same topics. By having a PFP that says, I'm interested in space travel, for say, then you can find everyone else who's interested in that. And so, as John was mentioning, you form communities, but not just borderless communities, instantaneous communities, since finally you can visually see everyone else who's also sharing a similar interest, rather than having to go on Reddit and find your people. Immediately you can see everyone else who has their jerseys up basically as profile pictures or in their wallets, because they all are showcasing they've invested in it.
Wow, you guys are painting an amazing picture of what's possible, and I don't know how to top that. Gunter, do you have any thoughts to add to that? I want to give you a chance.
No, I was just smiling above the last comment, because historically, a company was created by 5 guys from the same village or city, and I'm deliberately saying guys because that's who usually did it. But now really everybody can connect with everybody on this planet, right? That's the new reality, and that's what we're seeing with new companies that are starting up right now, and that have amazing ideas they're bringing to the metaverse or to any kind of NFT or other world. Right, so that's a really amazing part, which people don't even get to think about it, right? They just take it for granted, and that's just amazing.
Yeah, wonderful. I want to mention that, just to take a quick break from our very exciting conversation, I want to mention that our festival is coming up next week on February 22nd, NFT Festival. It's going to have, please, if you're interested, we'd love to have you all join that from the audience. Just go to the calendar and click on the bell so that you'll get a reminder for it. But it should be really interesting. We're going to have some interviews, an interview with Mike Butcher, and some panels. It should be really amazing, an amazing event. I'm really looking forward to it. And at the same time, I also want to mention to the audience, we will take questions in a few minutes. I know there's been quite a few hands raised, so we will be taking them in a few minutes. We're not quite there yet, but we'll invite you up to the stage in a few minutes. So just for the panelists, I would love to have what you think is what you predict for next year in this space that no one is talking about today. And maybe you've already covered it with some of the things that you've mentioned with historical reenactments or recreations, but just more in general. It's not what is possible for the experience, it's what we might see in our industry in terms of big brands. What are they going to do? Creators, what are they going to do? What is going to happen in this space over the next year? What do you think?
This is kind of basic. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please, after you.
Okay, this is super basic and people have been talking about it, but one thing that I'm personally really excited for, and I do hope it's executed, and we've heard about these big fashion brands like Fendi coming in, Gucci coming in, and they're kind of playing around with NFT space, but I would love, as someone who buys everything online, for immersive shopping in the metaverse to be real, and you can actually go into Fendi, you can go into Gucci, you can try on the clothes, and they are like, your avatar is the exact digital model in proportions to your own body, so that everything does fit. And it would be possible, and I don't know how this is possible, you can, like, the texture would feel the same as it would in real life. So that's something interesting. I mean, I know McDonald's yesterday came out with, they're doing some stuff in the metaverse where you can look at food and then order the real life version of it. That's kind of interesting, but there's the one concept that no one's talked about, because I don't know how it would be possible, but how could we replicate certain senses that we have in the real world in the metaverse? How can you replicate or find something equate to smell? There's no way you can smell anything in the metaverse right now. How can you replicate touch? Do we even need that? How can you replicate? But there's so many of these certain senses in terms of building these communities and connectivity that we lack. I mean, if you think of Zoom, we have like a hard time, like there's there's nothing that is kind of the same as like some of those in-person cues that you pick up on that aren't possible in Zoom, but smell and taste and touch, how I would love to see that in the metaverse. I don't know how it would happen, but that would be really interesting.
Well, I hope that first of all, there's more people joining, right? Because with every new person, new ideas will come to the table, and I expect that to happen. But mostly I'm thinking about how do we get new or old models integrated, like circularity, which I've been briefly mentioning before, because it's one of the crutches that we have in our current system, that we moved everything into a linear world where everything is produced faster and so forth. So when we think about many of the fashion brands that have been mentioned, it's all just about fast fashion and more, and selling you more and more and more. If I go into my cupboard, there's like 30 suits in there, and I'm feeling really bad about that, right? So people should think about that. And this is this new generation, which is mostly driving metaverse. So I'm hoping that those, in particular, circularity models are also integrated into the expansion of the metaverse.
Yeah, talking of suits, I heard recently, I mean, I don't know if it's actual, but it was from a quite, insightful person, that very, very high fashion brands and like blue chip tailors, they're kind of thinking of selling an NFT with a suit kind of thing, because they want to kind of promote this idea, a suit for life, that they are such a good quality that you don't need to buy another one. You can kind of because I'm presuming it's going to be a substantial investment as well. But yeah, personally, for the future, for the next year, what I'm kind of hoping for is for Ethereum to pull out the Ethereum 2, so we can stop having this hating about because yes, talking about what was why do museum people hate on NFTs? It's primarily the environmental impact, which has been demonized as if as if the alternative, which is the banking system, has a zero footprint. He's not even an active investor investing trillions in coal in fossil fuel companies. But yeah, if you look into the data, the hypocrisy is immense. But the average person truly believes that the NFTs. I mean, I was reading an article on the Art newspaper, and it was starting like that. The opening sentence was like, it's no secret that NFTs are destroying our planet. Like, that was the opening sentence, for Christ's sake, from the Art newspaper, very highly regarded, So I'm hoping that that will go through. But in general, I think we will start seeing more mass adoption, that people will kind of start. Because to be honest, we were expecting it to be fast with NFTs. We were expecting to kind of go fast, but this has gone crazy. So I kind of expect to be surprised, let's say.
That's a great comment. Expect to be surprised. I love it. Any last comments on what you predict for the next year?
I wanted to build a little on Casey's point, not something I had thought about before, but when she was describing how do you replicate senses, for example, in the metaverse, the way that my team and I thought about it when designing NFTs based on physical assets for the House of Lobkowitz Museum was, how do you not replicate senses, but how do you create new ones? So rather than seeing a new version of or digitized version of a physical painting, how do you show the X-ray? How do you show extrasensory vision that you wouldn't actually be able to in the physical world? And likewise for smell, for example, perhaps you can't actually recreate it, but you could do something you never had in the physical world. Say, look at a smell and break it up into all of its chemical components and make art out of that. What are ways that drive something that is unique to the digital experience rather than trying to replicate the physical? I think what we learned is that instead of thinking, how can the digital replicate the physical, rather what does digital allow for that physical can't? And once you see those two opportunities and see how they can cross over, I think that you can get really cool ideas.
That is so cool, Michelle. I love that idea. It's kind of like the way some people, when they hear, they can like hear colors, but like
exactly synesthesia on the metaverse. Exactly.
Crazy. Or I'm tasting something, but I can also like hear it and see it. It's just I love that concept.
Let's do it. I'll message you after. Awesome. See, the metaverse is great. You make friends.
Synesthesia real for everybody. That would be so cool. I love that.
Real for everyone. Or you taste something and you hear music, but at the same time you're able like to visually see all the compounds of like what that taste is. Like it's like a little bit of pepper, a little bit of lemon. Right. That would be really cool.
And then everybody could contribute their particular flavor. Only in the metaverse, I'd like to invite everyone from the audience, if you could come up and join us in the network area. We will take some questions, but come and join in the network area. Ina is showing you a circle of the network area, so everybody can come up to this area, and then we'll be able to chat with each each other. And I'll also take some questions. I think Sean has a question. Let me see if I can find you, Sean. Okay, there you are. Okay. Or it might be a different Sean. So I've invited Sean to come up on stage. And I see some people are coming into the networking zone. There's two Seans. I got confused. Okay, I've invited both Seans. So in order to talk, you're gonna have to come over to the area where the speakers are. Seans, both the Seans. There we go. Sean, did you have a question for us? Three Seans. We have three different Seans now.
You guys should make a
They're all
Sean
the hot
DAO.
Yeah.
That's a new trend, is to make DAOs with
It
people with
is.
the same names.
Okay, well, I think people are having a bit of a tough time getting onto the stage. I've invited two people onto the stage. Oh, is somebody ready to? You have to be on the stage in order to ask your question.
Sorry, I don't want to skip anybody.
Okay, did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. So I'm not sure if this is the right place, but I'm a aspiring NFT artist, and I've been wondering about something that I don't see mentioning that much, and is copyright and how to apply it before minting an NFT. Because I'm wondering, I know that when you mint an NFT, that basically provides some type of copyrighting that basically guarantees and validate with the ID and everything behind it. But should I copyright all my content before doing a mint? I mean, again, I don't know if this is the right place to ask this, but since
I can answer that. Yeah. So yeah, I've well, actually looking into it. I led a big cross-disciplinary research on NFTs. It's like on my LinkedIn, and there's a section about copyright per se. And anyway, so some platforms make that clarification. So if you mint your NFTs on Foundation, Foundation clearly states on their terms of conditions that no copyright is being transferred, no creative copyright. Meaning the only copyright that they, well, actually, I think we have a legal person here. So I think maybe it's best you to answer that question. Oh, I'm so bad with names. My fellow, we're sharing this so
Michelle?
far.
Michelle?
No,
Casey?
we have a person from a PwC legal.
PwC.
So,
Okay, go
yeah,
ahead.
I think, yeah, you're most appropriate.
Well, I'm not an IP lawyer, right? But obviously we had many dealings, a number of significant dealings with it. So there's two things. On the one hand, there's existing IPO that already existed before you thought about doing an NFT around it. So that had to do with many of the classical bands and so forth, where we are still struggling with many of that. But I guess you're creating a new one, right? And there I agree. I think you've been putting it in the right way. You should make sure that you do it, and you should also stipulate what you're transferring to whom and if they're participating and so forth.
I
All
see.
right, I'd like
you.
to add on to your answer actually, at your question. Okay, yeah. Okay, for copyright wise, all right, for example, like we on the Shiba team, we did the NFT called the Shiboshis. All right, copyright wise, we didn't really copyright it because we believe that when you get the NFT, it's the rights is all yours. Whether you want to print it on the shirt or you want to print it, you want to do it like a branding of your own, it's up to you because you own the art. And everything you do with it is out of our control. So, like for example, take example like CryptoPunks. All right, they don't have all the Lava Labs lock the rights to them. So what the punks can do is that they can just have a JPEG and that's it. You know, a profile picture and that's it. They can't print it on a shirt or they can't market it like print it on a coffee bag and do it. No, but for Shiboshis, Bored Apes, on Cool Cats and so on. You can actually do it, like you can take, as long as you own that NFT,
Yeah.
you can print it and anywhere and just market it. So it's up to you. up to you
be
on
honest,
whether you want to copyright it or not.
Yeah.
But it's purely decentralized, so
Let's
it's up to you.
let's take
Majority
let's
of
take
people.
another.
Just to clarify here, because yeah, I have looked into it. So by default, US law applies to NFTs. I know law changes by country, but I mean, taking the US as an example, there are papers out there proving that creation of digital content, which is like new creative work, the US law already applies without making a special mention on NFTs. What the problem is that platforms do not clarify that. So Rarible won't clarify that. I had to go on Rarible forums and say, if I sell an NFT, am I also giving up my creative copyright? Foundation, however, Foundation, the Foundation Marketplace, they do clarify that when you buy an NFT, the only rights that you buy are the right of property of the digital asset. So your rights are, the only rights that you have is to trade. So pretty much, just to simplify, by default, the law with NFTs works as it works with tangible paintings. When I buy a painting of Picasso, the copyright of Picasso remains to the Picasso estate. I do not buy Picasso's copyright. I only buy the tangible painting, the canvas. So, but the clarification needs to be made because, for example, Shiba Inu may have said that for our NFTs, you can do whatever you want. The CryptoKitties, who were like the first super famous NFT collection, probably in the early days, where they invented the ERC 721, they have the Nifty license, where they also make mention that maybe when you buy an NFT, you also buy commercial rights. But by default, an NFT sale is similar to a sale of a tangible painting. But anyway, you as an artist, you have to clarify that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you. Since time is limited, let's take another question. Andrew, did you have a question, or somebody else is on stage right now?
Yeah, I have a question. It's kind of related to what Casey and Michelle were talking about in terms of like metaverse and senses and things. I was interested what the panel thought about accessibility to the masses, because I think we can all agree that we're pretty early on in terms of what we're actually going to be seeing in, say, like 10 or 15 years time in Web3, if even Web3 is still a thing by then. It could be Web4, who knows. But one thing that maybe it's not possible for smell or texture to be digitally recreated, so that I can go to like a Gucci store and feel what a leather jacket from Gucci is going to feel like in my living room. But if I could, I guess my question is more referring to like, do we really want that sort of technology to be available? Because won't that just expand the already pretty significant gap between sort of average Joes and very rich people? Because I can imagine that sort of
do we have
a
panel, an answer from the panelists?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing. So I feel like there's this dichotomy between, in the same way that we were talking earlier about this connectivity that is like, we can't even think about it, like the spontaneous mass connections, like as you said, New York City in the metaverse, like we're able to meet so many people at once and just connect. Like we can't really comprehend that because of the physical limitations. And when you think of it that way, like that means that there's so many people in the world that didn't have access to education, that didn't have access to certain opportunities, and it would give them this platform to succeed, to have access to education. However, in order to do that, they do need access to technology first. And I was just looking at it, like even in this past month, or even as of January 2021, only 60% of the global population has access to Wi-Fi. So 40% of the world still doesn't have access to Wi-Fi or basic infrastructure, which means that they would also be left out of the metaverse. So it's kind of, if we were able to make the metaverse and like bridge that technology gap infrastructure, there's so many opportunities for everyone. Like there could have been so many people that could have been Nobel Prize winners, could have had, could have been like the next, maybe the next president, who knows. But we do need to fill that gap. And how do we begin? By just kind of starting with the basics. So it could either widen the gap or give amazing opportunities.
Right, it could go either way. I'd like to give Charmaine an opportunity to ask a question. Charmaine, you're on the stage. Do you have something to add?
Yeah. Thanks for this chat. It's been amazing. I've been involved with a metaverse organisation recently, which I'm not sure if people are aware of, called Queendom, on the Solana blockchain. And I know what people were saying earlier about inclusivity and things. Well, the Queendom metaverse is supposed to be an opportunity to make minorities the majority. And it's going to be the first metaverse where everyone is welcome. You know, most of the team developing it are women, or they're from underrepresented groups, LGBTQ plus, or people of color, or all these things, you know, people with disabilities. So we're gathering requirements together to see, you know, if you're a wheelchair user, what difficulties do you have? You know, can you wear a headset to access the metaverse? All these types of requirements. So if you're interested in like a really sort of diverse and inclusive metaverse, then check out Queendom.
Okay,
Queendom.
Thank you. And I see Sean is on the stage. We tried to get you on stage for quite a while there, Sean. So please go ahead with your question. You're on mute.
I apologize. I actually have a question based upon what you noted. Isn't Elon Musk through SpaceX working on the infrastructure to be able to provide all the things necessary to create what, you know, everything that's happening?
The question is Elon Musk doing what needs to happen?
Through the satellites, you know, you noted 40% of the population, you know, is through internet. So I'm saying, I'm asking if through the launch of these SpaceX satellites, is that or is that not, in your opinion, providing the basis for, you know, to, I guess, equalize the playing field?
Panelists, what do you think?
Me?
Maybe.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe. I'm not super like tuned into what SpaceX is doing beyond like the average person, but I think it's a good start. I know that like a couple days ago he lost like 40 satellites, so I don't know how well it's going, but I like the ambition.
The one point to note about that sort of ecosystem for internet infrastructure is that it's quite centralized. If it's one person that's distributing it, then you have to rely on that one person. So as a crypto nut, I'm always looking for alternative solutions for example, internet providers. So things like Helium, for example, are nodes that different people own to create a decentralized network for cellular service. And so likewise, I imagine things like that happening for Wi-Fi.
Threefold. Threefold is a company doing something similar, distributed internet. We're just about out of time, but I would like to invite everybody to join us in the networking area. Perhaps we can continue the conversation there on a less formal basis. But before we do that, I would just like to thank you so much, all of you, all of the panelists. It has been an absolute pleasure to moderate this panel, and I've learned so much, and I hope to connect with each of you in the IRL, in real life. So thank you so much for your thoughts and bringing.
Thank you so much for having us. Bye guys, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Thank you.